One of the main tenets of a free, liberal society is pluralism and diversity. We aspire to create a society where every group is free to live its own way, and they all coexist peacefully. All Western societies are now subscribed to this vision, and have been quite successful in achieving it, creating a rich and prolific mixture of cultures. But there are still groups that are opposed to diversity, and are actively working against it. One of these groups, unfortunately, is contemporary feminism, at least a significant part of it. Anita Sarkeesian is one of those anti-pluralist feminists, and the fourth video of our series will therefore be dedicated to this aspect of her work. At the heart of pluralism is the understanding that human beings are different from one another. Every individual is a unique blend of biological traits, cultural backgrounds, personal experiences, and subjective preferences, and they form communities with others that share some of these individual characteristics. The pluralistic mind loves this diversity, and wants everyone to be able to pursue their different group identities. We do not believe that any identity is objectively better than the other. As long as they don't impinge on the rights of other people, they are all fine. We must, however, differentiate between pluralism and tribalism. Tribalism is the belief that people are inherently bound to the group they belong to, and is usually also characterized by the belief that my group is better than yours. Pluralism, on the other hand, believes that every individual has the right to choose which group they want to belong to, and you have the right to leave any group at any time. Up until the 20th century, humanity was very tribalist. People believed that there are absolute differences between groups, and every group has its essential characteristics. For instance, it was believed that there are absolute differences between men and women, so if a woman exhibited characteristics that were considered masculine, or if a man exhibited characteristics that were considered feminine, they were seen as suffering from a problem that needs to be cured. On the basis of that, it was determined that there are certain things that you cannot do based on your gender. For instance, that there are certain jobs that the woman is not allowed to do. By now, thankfully, we have learned that the differences between men and women are not absolute but statistical. It is statistically true that the man is taller than the woman, but that doesn't mean that a specific man would be taller than a specific woman. Therefore, you can't say that a certain type of job is not for women because it requires height. The same thing goes for all other differences between men and women. So we still believe that there are traits that are more masculine or more feminine, but we are not bound by them. And we do not rule out someone's ability to do something based on their gender, or any other group identity for that matter. That is how we, as a society, have progressed. Now let's see if Anita Sarkeesian is part of that progress.
In most ways, Destiny treats its playable female characters almost identically to how it treats its male characters. For instance, the armor you acquire when playing as a female character isn't sexualized, but looks just as practical and stylish as the gear equipped by male characters. However, there is one way in which the male and female characters are differentiated by gender, and it has to do with their movement. Watch how a male guardian sits down, taking a load off after a long, hard day fighting the forces of pure evil. It's simple, it suggests confidence. When a female character sits down, however, it's a completely different story. She sits like a delicate flower. This is supposed to be a hardened space warrior, and yet she's sitting around like she's Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
So the game allows you to play as a man or as a woman, acknowledging that women can be badass warriors too. However, it doesn't want them to lose the femininity altogether, so they still display some feminine characteristics. That isn't good enough for Anita. She wants all differences between the genders to be erased. Basically, she wants to erase the concepts of femininity and masculinity altogether. Why does Anita hate diversity so much? Well, let's take another example.
Alas, Joanna Dark never quite reached the levels of fame occupied by Lara Croft, but Perfect Dark was still a big success. Let's take a look at a commercial for the game.
Welcome to 2023. Big businesses now merge with alien nations. An ancient war is being fought under the sea. The president is about to be cloned. And it's your job to try and save the world. So you've got an important decision to make. What are you going to wear to work?
Can you imagine an ad exactly like this, only with Marcus Phoenix or Master Chief getting out of bed naked, taking a sexy slow-motion shower, putting on his sexy underwear, and the narrator saying that he has an important decision to make? What is he going to wear to work?
Not likely, due to the difference between menswear and womenswear. A man looks good in clothes that are more casual, clothes that you can also do battle in. Women look their best in clothes that are more elegant. The ad wants to show us that Agent Dark is so badass that even when she saves the world she still has the time to look good. But Anita doesn't see it that way. For her, it is all some sort of plot against women. Why does she believe that? Because, as we shall soon learn, Anita denies the differences between men and women. Therefore, she does not see the difference in their sense of style as something that stems from their different nature. In Anita's mind, society artificially invented the categories of masculine and feminine, and imposed them on a human race in which there is actually no natural differences between men and women. Furthermore, she believes that the feminine was designed specifically to pleasure the masculine. So when a woman dresses and moves in feminine ways, in Anita's mind it is done solely for the enjoyment of men, and is therefore an expression of sexism. Anita's prejudice is of course revealed best of all when she discusses the issue of nudity in video games.
None of this makes any sense. What did we do?
Wish I could tell you.
The latest game in the series, 2015's Resident Evil Revelations 2, continues this condescending tradition by offering DLC that puts Claire Redfield into a sexualized cowgirl outfit and forces Moira into whatever the hell this is supposed to be. The developers call it an urban ninja costume. Meanwhile, the male playable character Barry gets a gentleman's commandant alternative costume.
Anita is implying that the fact that the male character doesn't wear a revealing costume is a sort of discrimination against women. Her theory seems to be that female characters wear revealing clothes and men don't because of sexism. But you see, Anita, I can't believe I have to tell you this, but if being naked or partially naked would have made us popular with the ladies, there would not be one guy who would keep his pants on. But the fact is, we know that a lot of women are repelled by male nudity, so we go for looks that we know are popular with the large majority of the female population. A nice suit, for instance, is a perennial winner. Uniforms are known to get the ladies' hearts pumping. The wild, dangerous and rebellious look, if you can pull it off, will score big points. The shirtless look also works, in some situations. But if you go naked, or some partial nudity, yeah, some chicks are gonna like it, but chances are you'll get this reaction.
That is not a good look for a man.
Why not? It's a good look for a woman.
Well, female body is a work of art. The male body is utilitarian. It's for getting around. It's like a Jeep.
So you don't think it's attractive?
It's hideous. The hair, the lumpiness, it's simian.
Well, some women like it.
Sickies.
Everybody knows this, including game developers, so they will put female characters in revealing costumes that make them look good and male characters in the kind of costumes that make them look good. How is it that you don't know this, Anita? Could it be that feminism has distorted your perception of reality to such an extent? Or is it that you do know this, but are deceitfully ignoring it to create a semblance of sexism that is not there?
But video game designers often choose to put tremendous focus on the butts of certain characters, while going to almost absurd lengths to avoid calling attention to the butts of others. These carefully crafted choices developers make about camera angles and clothing significantly impact how players think about and relate to these characters.
As we can see, this is all just part of Anita's agenda. Her theory is that women's wear is more revealing because society is sexist, and is constructing us to view women as sexual objects. According to Anita, it is not our nature that dictates that we enjoy gazing upon the woman's body more than the man's body, but it is society that has conditioned us to be like that. Video games are just part of this process. She goes on to blame the game developers that they are making the game specifically for the enjoyment of men.
If it seems like I'm frequently repeating the fact that the player is presumed to be a straight male, that's because it's vital to remember. This presumption influences and shapes so many creative decisions that are made in the development of many games.
Most of us would see it differently. We would say that since the games Anita criticizes are all action games, it is perfectly logical for game developers to presume that more boys would play them than girls. There are types of video games that are aimed at girls, such as dating sims, and I assume that the male characters in them are more compatible with female fantasies. But since Anita does not recognize that there is a difference between boys and girls, she sees it as an expression of misogyny. She seems to believe that girls would play action games just as much as boys do, if only they weren't turned off by the sexualized depiction of women. Anita, of course, is entitled to her theory, regardless of how ridiculous it may seem to most of us. But when she treats her theory as if it is the one and only truth, and then blames the rest of us for being misogynist because we disagree with that theory, that's when she becomes an anti-pluralist. Basically, Anita's brand of feminism represents liberal thought that has gone too far, until it became anti-liberal. The liberal view freed us from the tribal tradition that believed that every individual is defined by the group identity, that there are absolute differences between tribes, and that our tribe represents authentic humanity while yours represents a corruption of it. Today we realize that we should not stereotype individuals by the group identity. The differences between groups are merely statistical and that we are all humans. But liberalism does acknowledge that there are differences between humans, and that is why we advocate a pluralist society in which they can form groups. We try not to stereotype individuals by assuming that they possess their group characteristics, but we still recognize that groups have characteristics. Anita, on the other hand, represents a worldview that has taken this to the extreme, and in its zeal not to stereotype anyone ended up denying the differences between groups. So basically, her feminism denies any difference between humans, and sees all differences as artificially imposed. And so, ironically, she is taking us back to the tribal way of thinking. For her, there is only one true worldview, the one that denies the diversity of human nature, and any diversion from it is a corruption. At this point, you may be wondering just how deep does Anita's denial of the statistical difference between men and women go? Well, unless you are familiar with the depths today's feminism has sunk into, you would never guess it.
The belief that women are somehow a naturally weaker gender is a deeply ingrained socially constructed myth, which of course is completely false. But the notion is reinforced and perpetuated when women are continuously portrayed as frail, fragile, and vulnerable creatures.
Yes, you heard that right. Anita claims that there is no biological difference in the physical strength of men and women, and the belief that there is one is nothing more than a socially constructed myth. Why are we led to believe that men are physically stronger? Anita explains.
The reality is, this trope is being used in a real-world context where backward sexist attitudes are already rampant. It's a sad fact that a large percentage of the world's population still clings to the deeply sexist belief that women as a group need to be sheltered, protected, and taken care of by men.
So Anita's argument is that it is all part of a system that disenfranchises women by claiming that they are too weak to be independent in today's world. She seems to suggest that by viewing women as physically weaker, we are automatically led to believe that they are weak in every other aspect as well, and need to be sheltered and restricted for their own safety. I know what you're thinking. Are there really still people in Western society today who still think along these backwards regressive notions, and believe women are delicate flowers that need constant protection? Well, to be fair to Anita, I did manage to find a case of someone who still thinks along these lines, and yet is still a powerful figure in our society, powerful enough to be invited to speak in front of the UN.
By doing this work, I have been the target for 3 years nonstop of egregious online harassment in all levels. I think it's important to recognize that harassment is, as someone had mentioned, it's not just what is legal and illegal, right? Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck, you know, making all of these hate videos to attack us on a regular basis, and the mobs that come from those hate videos, etc. I think that the online social media sites and the places in which we are engaging on these large platforms really need to step up and change the way that their systems operate. So it's not enough that they simply put band-aids on the problem areas, that they need to completely reimagine what their systems look like in order to build sites that actively deter online harassment, that make it harder to do this.
The speaker here claims that women are incapable of handling online criticism, that they are too frail and fragile to contend with being told that they suck, and that they need society to step in and protect them. But she is the only example I could find of someone who still holds such misogynistic views. So you can rest assured, Anita, your fears are unfounded. The vast majority of Western people today believe that while women are physically weaker than men and need protection in this aspect, on any other aspect they are strong enough to stand their own ground. We are perfectly capable of distinguishing between physical strength and other kinds of strength, as evidenced by the fact that we do not give women any preferential treatment online, but criticize and attack them as we would do to men. Gamergate was a perfect example of this lack of sexism in internet culture, and in the gaming community in particular. So Anita's claim that showing women as physically weak leads the gamers to believe that women are weaker overall may be true for this gamer, but she is merely an exception that proves the rule. As a matter of fact, I think video games and movies of today are guilty of portraying women as too physically strong. A good way in which video games can help battle the problem of violence against women is to let the male gamer play a physically weak female character, and let him sense what it is like to fear the presence of men. I would like to see a game developer ballsy enough to let the female protagonist be sexually assaulted, and let the gamer experience the helplessness and horror that she goes through. Those are ways in which video games can help men develop more empathy and understanding towards women. But as long as critics like Anita Sarkeesian set the tone of video game criticism, I fear that there is no chance that this will happen. In summation, we found that Anita Sarkeesian denies the diversity of human nature. Her feminist worldview is that we are all born biologically the same, and it is society that teaches us that we are different. This denial of natural diversity leads her to reject pluralism of opinions as well. She does not accept that opinions different from hers are valid. To her, any dissenting opinion is an expression of sexism, and anyone who dares present such opinions to her is guilty of harassment and hate speech. What she is advocating for is a homogeneous, uniform society, where everyone is conditioned to think the same way. When you listen to her criticizing video games, remember that this is where she wants to lead us, and ask yourself if this is really the world that you want to live in.